We hear the term diet culture thrown around a lot these days, but do you actually know what it means? I find that a lot of people don't, and I don't blame them. I think that a huge part of that comes down to marketing and things that are ingrained in our society. So today I'm going to break down 3 very real examples of diet culture within our American society. It's in a lot of cultures too. I just happen to live in the United States. And I'm going to give you an idea of how you can combat it. But let's start with the definition. Diet culture is the belief that your body's appearance and shape are more important than its overall health. And you see this belief carried out by over-controlling elements in your life, like your diet and your exercise, to manipulate your body. A lot of these things I'm gonna bring up are very prevalent in our society, and you probably don't even realize how messed up they are. Now, I don't usually put a trigger warning in my videos, but we're gonna put one up right now because if you are somebody who in the past dealt with disordered eating or disordered thoughts or are currently in that state, this might not be the best video for you to watch. But let's dive into the first example that I see in our society. First up is clean eating. Oh, this was me for so long. I was absolutely obsessed with eating clean, natural, organic, unprocessed, no chemical foods in my early 20s. And side note, all foods are chemicals. Everything we eat is a chemical. So we can just like get that rationale right out of the way. But you might be thinking like, oh, you were eating healthy. Isn't that a good thing? And yes, it is a good thing for your overall health to be eating nutrient-dense foods. But when you're only doing so out of fear and obsession, this is where it becomes disorder. Eating clean makes food sound moral. And food is not good or bad, right or wrong. Food is literally just fuel. You need it to live, you need it for energy, and all food is fine in moderation, unless you have like a deathly allergy. Personally, my clean eating led to a lot of disordered thoughts, a lot of fear, a lot of guilt, and then eventually into this like restrict binge type of pattern. You know, I remember being on theater contracts and restricting myself to well under 1,000 calories a day, and I would be so proud that I would stick to it for a few weeks. And then finally I would cave and like order and devour an entire pizza. And I would feel so guilty. And I just felt like a failure and like I was a bad person. And honestly, looking back, like I definitely had elements of orthorexia with just like my hyper focus on perfection with diet and exercise. But I was never diagnosed, and I'm not going to self-diagnose myself because that is well out of my scope of practice. But I find that with talking with so many of my clients who were never diagnosed with a full-blown eating disorder, a lot of people had the same tendencies as me. And a lot of them fell into this clean eating type of trend. Now, hard stop here. If you do feel like you are somebody who is currently dealing with this, I would highly recommend reaching out to someone like a registered dietitian or a therapist to get the help that you need, because again, this is well outside of my scope of practice. Now, even though this clean eating trend started in 2007, and I do feel like we have kind of progressed away from at least that terminology, I do feel like you see it a lot in our society still. So if you don't want to fall into this trap, here's the best advice I can give you. Focus on addition rather than subtraction. Look at your plate. Do you have more than one color on your plate? Do you have a vegetable on your plate? Do you have a fiber source on your plate? The more you focus on adding in nutrient-dense foods and focus on how those make you feel, the more we get out of this I can only eat this type of mindset, rather than I'm adding these things in because I understand their benefits, but I can also have dessert after this. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of undoing, but this is honestly one of the most beneficial mindset shifts that you can give yourself. Okay, the next one, suppressing your appetite with things like caffeine, water, cigarettes, etc. I feel like it's a very common thing where it's like, if you're hungry, oh, maybe you're just thirsty, have a glass of water instead. Or I see a lot of the times people not wanting to eat first thing in the morning, so they suppress their appetite with a few cups of coffee. While these scenarios are tricky, you know, just like our food, they're not black and white. They're not like inherently good or bad, but it kind of comes down to like how you're utilizing these scenarios. Because I don't want you to draw the conclusion that I'm saying drinking water is bad or drinking coffee is bad, because this is always how these videos end up going in the comments. What I'm saying is that it comes down to your purpose, right? So if we go back to the caffeine example, if you are waking up in the morning and you're hungry and you're purposely having enough caffeine that it stops your hunger cues so you're less uncomfortable, and you're doing this because you're trying to lose weight, personally, I think this is a slippery slope. And let me explain why. So when you're hungry, your body releases a hormone called ghrelin. This signals your body that it's time to eat. And that's because in bodies with healthy hormone levels, it's because you're hungry. And to break this down even more clearly, your body is hungry because it needs fuel, aka food. And then on the flip side, when you've had enough to eat, your body releases another hormone called leptin. Leptin helps to regulate your energy balance by inhibiting hunger. Basically saying that like when your body has had enough food or fuel, leptin gets released to be like, yo, we don't need any more. That's just gonna be an excess and we don't need that. And if we do get it, we're gonna store it as fat for energy later. So when you're utilizing something like caffeine to suppress your hunger over and over and over, this could potentially disrupt your hormone levels. So eventually over time, you really run the risk of getting out of touch with your hunger cues, aka your hormones, because they're not gonna be firing correctly. So you might not be able to recognize hunger. You might not be able to recognize being satisfied. And then you can kind of like end up drawing the same conclusions from using water and nicotine in the same way. The science is a little different there, but the concept remains the same. So if you are somebody who uses caffeine or nicotine or water to suppress your appetite, here's what I recommend doing. For 1 week, stop. So let's say it's that you use it at breakfast time, right? I would recommend eating breakfast for a week and seeing what happens. Keep a little diary, see how you're feeling, like how are your energy levels? How's your mental clarity? How do you feel emotionally about adding that food back in? And just see what happens. I'm not saying that it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, I feel more amazing than ever by adding this back in. No, because everybody's different. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that everyone needs to have like 3 square meals a day, because that doesn't necessarily work for every single person. But if you are purposely restricting yourself from eating a meal simply because whatever your reason might be, understanding the risks involved with that, I think the best thing you can do is reverse it and see how you feel. Okay, the last one we're gonna talk about today is a doozy, and it's very complex, and I'm literally scratching the surface here, but it is in the arts, people in larger bodies being portrayed as funny. You see this a lot as like the fat, funny best friend, right? I will say that this is slowly changing, but especially when like I was a kid growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was so prevalent. It was almost just like a format, right? You have the beautiful leading lady who falls in love with the beautiful leading man, and then you have like their fat best friends who are funny. I mean, think about like Megan in Bridesmaids, Melissa McCarthy. You think about, oh my God, her name is literally Fat Amy in Pitch Perfect, Rebel Wilson. Do we all remember the Fat Monica episode of Friends? And look, just to be clear, I don't have an issue with people in larger bodies playing comedic roles. But for a long time, that's all that's been available to them, whether they're funny or not, because our society is somehow married together that fat equals funny. And there is just no way that somebody in a larger body could be a love interest, or that someone in a larger body couldn't star in something that has nothing to do with the size of their body. And again, this is such a larger topic. It is not just about people in larger bodies. Like, it's about any minority, anyone who is not a white, able-bodied person, like they get pushed into these stereotypes. I distinctly remember reading an article that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote when like the In the Heights movie came out, about when In the Heights opened on Broadway, and people were so confused about like, why is there no gang violence and where's all the drugs? It's like Hispanic people can have life experiences just like white people that don't revolve around drugs and gangs. Like, their lives aren't West Side Story. Anyway, that was a tangent. Back to my original point. I do find that there has been progress over the years of seeing people in the arts and in media in larger bodies, and it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they're in a larger body, or maybe they are playing like a leading role. You know, there's Chrissy Metz playing Kate on This Is Us. Obviously, a lot of that storyline does have to do with her size, but she's also like the leading freaking lady on the show. Beanie Feldstein is currently playing Fanny Brice on Broadway. Now, you will see a lot of people pushing back about her playing that role because of things like nepotism, or maybe that she can't sing the role. I have not seen it, so I literally have zero comment on it. But you will also see so many comments of people saying she shouldn't play that role because she's in a larger body and Fanny Brice was not fat. Who the fuck cares? It has nothing to do with it. I also want a hard stop before I give you something like actionable that you can do and say that I'm very aware that I am in a white, thin body. Like, I get it. And I'm not the person to be a spokesperson about this. But I do think that if I'm not acknowledging it and I'm quiet about it, then that's like the bigger issue. So I'm not saying I'm an expert, I'm not, and I'm probably pretty sure that some of my phrasing and terminology is not the most inclusive. Always feel free to correct me and educate me in the comments, because I'm always learning. But that was it. I just wanted to acknowledge that real quick. Okay, let's talk about what you can do. You can support the arts that break this barrier. Go see a show, binge watch something on Netflix, go follow a creator on YouTube that is not what we typically see in society. Because as the consumer, the best thing that you can do is put your money, I guess, where your mouth is. Like, put your money where your beliefs are, right? Because the more that we finance the things and the change that we want to see, the better. Now, there are so many other examples of diet culture that are just ingrained in our society, and I really did just scratch the surface. So if you want to add to the conversation, please do so below. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos, and I will see you all in the next one.